How does one look at a city, and from where? There is always a viewpoint. It appears in time and accompanies the history of a place from the moment it starts to have one. At first, a city is simply a place surrounded by walls, a perimeter to oppose the nature around, a group of houses. Faint features, fantastic skylines, good in any circumstances. First, a city must be built and given a soul, a shape. Then we can start looking at it, finding a point from which to look. When we went up into the hills, states Guido Piovene, we could see Vicenza, drawn in the shape of a scorpion slightly curled upon itself with its pincers open towards the east. The same thing had been written by Silvestro Castellini at the beginning of the 17th century. Now the city has grown, we cannot see that shape anymore. Even before, it was only visible from the hills of Monte Berico, so close to the walls. The first modern glance of the city is from above. At the end of the Middle Ages, when a view of the city was requested, the Vicentinis found it here. Painters paint Vicenza from here. This came about for religious reasons and for visual and pictorial motives. From the slopes of Monte Berico, one can imagine looking upon the city as the Virgin Mary may have done when she appeared on the mountain in 1426 to save Vicenza from a plague. In fact, the view from there leaves one agape, wrote Goethe, as other 18th century travelers such as Count Caylus and Abbot Richard did before him. In other words, there is no better spot from which to see the old towers, the bell towers, and the huge upset keel of Palazzo della Ragione. Since the start of the modern era, pilgrims, painters, and travelers haven't stopped watching the city from there. What can their eyes see? What could they see? We are answered by Guglielmo, the English architect protagonist of Forestiere Istruito, a popular guide to the city of 1761. They saw the view of the city and the great plain sown with churches, palaces, and houses up to the foot of the mountains. When talking of Vicenza, one is always drawn to the architecture, wrote Charles de Brosse a few years earlier. That's why one comes to Vicenza, to admire its architecture, starting with the Palladian works. When in London, Francesco Zuccarelli paints an ideal view of Vicenza for a demanding tourist. In the middle of the scene, on the slopes of Monte Berico, the great English architect Inigo Jones appears along with his patron. He is talking with Palladio and exchanging projects which deserve respect, if only for their origin in Vicenza. The people of Vicenza realize this. Since the mid-1700s, architecture has been a sort of explicit logo, a definitive brand of quality. Its importance, though, had been realized a couple of centuries earlier. The beautiful Pianta Angelica of 1580 in the Vatican Map Gallery allows Vicenza to be ranked among the most important cities in Italy, but it is also the testimony of an ever-improving urban weave. According to Giorgio Vasari, the Palladian buildings alone are enough to create a highly honored city and a wonderful province. The urban landscapes follow one another, offering new and interesting viewpoints. Vicenza has lots to show off. Architecture is therefore the protagonist. Architecture that boasts at least 5 centuries of high achievements, where new works unite with earlier ones, with harmonious continuity. And thus Vicenza became the city of palaces. Strewn with palaces, wrote Hofmannsthal after wandering the city in 1903. To celebrate the visit of Pope Pio VI in 1782, a tablet speaks of Clarem Edificis Urbem, of a place famous for its buildings. a place that is an open-air museum of architecture, of which the perspectives of Teatro Olimpico offer an excellent synopsis. When Pope Pio saw it, it was said that, being accustomed to Rome's numerous beauties, he was nonetheless left agape by such a magnificent discovery. Jérôme de Lalande invited all the young European architects to Vicenza, saying they should stay in this city to study the purity of the style and perfection of the proportions. The same happened before Palladio. In 1525, a traveller from the Italian region Marche described a superbly styled Vicenza in great detail. During the last part of the Gothic period, there was a boom of buildings that rivaled their Venetian contemporaries. Superb, historiated palaces with flaming facades of fine gold, rich in reliefs and paintings. As numerous as the noble houses, the list of which entirely occupies 2 octaves in Dragonzino Da Fano's pages. Decorated with vibrant frescoes, they hold their own when compared to the great churches, such as Santa Corona treasure chest of paintings and the Duomo that raises its proud forehead with red and white marbles which seem to form roses, a city of color. It is the private architecture that really surpasses the seats of public power, as shown by a rough map of 1481. The city has only known political autonomy for the briefest of periods throughout its history. The aristocratic elite do not govern, and perhaps because of this, they want to compensate themselves with houses fit for rulers. Andrea Palladio understands this well. At the beginning of his treatise, he writes that Vicenza isn't big but rich, and that his patrons wish to abandon the outdated practice of constructing without grace and beauty in any form, to follow the new trend that Andrea himself proposes. Palladio creates more than 10 palaces in the historic center, although none will be completed by the architect himself. Each is different from the others. Andrea insists on this. Each noble patron has the right to his own dream of stone and brick, to something corresponding to specific needs and with unique features. As Goethe observes, he managed to give them a great impression of themselves. He could make them feel the magnificence of a great life. With respect to the Gothic city that preceded it, this was a great turnabout.